picture an incredibly specific, yet entirely ordinary evening. You're driving home from work.
Oh, yeah. We all know this feeling.
Right. It's late, maybe pushing past 7 o'clock. The sky has turned that heavy, sort of bruised purple color, and a light, relentless drizzle is falling.
The kind that just coats the windshield and makes the glare terrible.
Exactly. And you can feel the cold, rigid plastic of the steering wheel pressing into your palms.
Yeah.
You might not even realize it, but your grip is just a little too tight.
Oh, your knuckles are pale white.
Yeah. The only sound in the car is the rhythmic, almost mocking thump, 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 thump of the windshield wipers. They push the water away, only for it to instantly return.
And your jaw is completely clenched.
Totally clenched. You've had one of those days where, well, nothing went tragically wrong, but absolutely everything was a struggle.
Right, like wading through wet cement. Every single email required 3 follow-ups.
Yes. All you want to, the absolute only thing keeping you tethered to your sanity in this traffic is the thought of walking through your front door into your civicuary.
You just want a single moment of peace.
That's it. So you finally pull into the driveway. You turn the key in the lock, you push the door open, you let out that long, ragged sigh of relief, and you look down.
Uh-oh. The floor.
The floor. Tracked all across the freshly clean, gleaming hardwood floor is a chaotic, overlapping pattern of fresh, wet, earthy-smelling mud.
The family dog.
The family dog.
Yeah.
He's had a joyous adventure in the yard, and your floor is the canvas.
It's a profoundly relatable image. We can all instantly summon that exact feeling.
Right. And if you're listening to this right now, you probably know exactly what happens in the physical body. The very millisecond those muddy paw prints register in your visual cortex.
Oh, the physical reaction is instantaneous.
It really is. It's not just a mild passing annoyance. For a split second, it feels like a catastrophic personal attack.
Like you've been physically struck.
Yes. You feel this sudden volcanic heat rising right up the center of your chest. Your heartbeat just dramatically accelerates, thudding in your ears.
Your breathing gets shallow and sharp.
Exactly. A completely overwhelming surge of pure, unadulterated frustration washes over you. Your hands might even shake a little.
It's pure adrenaline.
Right. And here is the question that brings us to this exploration today. Why? Why does something so phenomenally trivial, a few ounces of wet dirt on a piece of wood, cause us to completely lose our physical and mental equilibrium?
It makes no logical sense.
None at all. Why do minor daily frictions provoke such a massive, agonizing internal response?
Well, it points to a deep mystery about the fundamental architecture of the human mind. We're looking at a collection of highly insightful psychological and philosophical writings today that look directly into the hidden mechanics of our frustrations.
Our anger, our everyday aggression.
Right. And our mission for this conversation is twofold. First, we need to uncover the actual mechanical reasons why our minds react this way.
The biology and the psychology.
Exactly. And second, we want to map out a path, a very challenging but immensely rewarding path to transform that bitter, explosive, reactive energy into a profound state of inner strength.
Inner strength and peace. I love that. So let's start at the very foundation. To understand the muddy floor meltdown, these materials suggest we have to look at a biological concept called bipolar reactivity.
Right. Bipolar reactivity.
Which, sounds like clinical jargon, but my understanding is that this is the absolute baseline of how living things operate. Can you walk us through the actual mechanics of that?
Sure. If we want to understand our most complex emotional meltdowns, we actually have to start at the cellular level. Every living organism on this planet is governed by this principle.
So it's like the most basic binary code of biology.
Exactly. It means simply these organisms are naturally driven to turn toward what sustains life and turn away from what threatens it.
Like a single-celled organism.
Right. Think of a simple paramecium swimming in a drop of pond water. It operates on pure physical tropisms.
Tropisms.
Yeah, automatic responses. It automatically, mechanically turns toward the light and swims away from the dark. It moves toward chemical nourishment and recoils from toxins.
So there's no thought process involved at all.
None. It's the fundamental intelligence of the life force itself. Attraction and aversion. Desire and fear. I want this. I do not want that.
So at our absolute biological core, we are just highly complex paramecium trying to find the light and avoid the dark.
Pretty much. We are wired to seek pleasure, to seek safety, and we violently reject pain and danger. We share that baseline completely with the animal kingdom.
So animals make choices based on this continuous loop too.
Absolutely. They seek a warm place to sleep. They seek high-calorie food. They run from predators. The gazelle runs from the cheetah, not out of, philosophical dread.
Right, it's not having an existential crisis.
No, it's just pure mechanical aversion to being eaten. But here is where the human story takes a sharp turn away from the animal story.
And where our specific, agonizing brand of suffering begins.
Exactly. Humans evolved something no other animal possesses to the same degree, which is the capacity for complex, abstract language.
Okay, I understand that language is our defining feature. We can name things, we can create complex syntax, but I'm struggling to connect the dots here.
How does it lead to suffering?
Yeah. How does my ability to speak English or Spanish turn a muddy paw print into a psychological crisis? How does language equal suffering?
Well, the connection is arguably the most important mechanism in human psychology. Language doesn't just allow us to communicate information.
It alters us.
It completely alters the structure of our consciousness. Because of language, objects acquire a symbolic existence that is entirely separate from physical reality.
Oh, wow. Okay, give me an example.
Think about the word tree. The word itself has no bark. It has no leaves. It casts no shadow. Yet when I say the word tree, your mind conjures the image immediately.
Right, I see a tree in my head.
So language allows us to refer to things that exist but aren't currently present, like your car parked outside. But more dangerously, it allows us to refer to things that do not exist concretely at all.
Like what?
We can conceptualize a horned rabbit, an ideal utopian society, or, the concept of next Tuesday.
I see. Because we can conceptualize things that aren't physically in front of us, we can anticipate the future.
And we can agonize over the past. We take a huge step out of the pure animal present.
Wow. The gazelle is only afraid when the cheetah is physically in the grass.
Exactly.
But I can sit in a perfectly safe, temperature-controlled room and experience a massive spike in cortisol just because I'm thinking about a meeting that hasn't happened yet.
That is the exact mechanism. And the most significant, complex, and ultimately troublesome concept that language allows us to construct is the sense of self.
The sense of self.
Yeah.
Like our identity.
Right. Unlike animals, we aren't just biological bodies interacting with the physical environment. We have a highly individuated, complex psychological identity.
So how does language build that?
Well, consider the word personality. It comes from the Latin word persona, which actually referred to the literal physical masks worn by actors in ancient Roman plays.
Oh, that's fascinating. So our sense of self is quite literally a mask.
It's a character. We build it out of words, memories, narratives, and social relationships. We tell ourselves a story about who we are. And just as our physical body is energized by that primitive life force, this psychological sense of self is also energized by that exact same fundamental life force.
Wait, let me make sure I'm grasping this. The same biological drive that makes a paramecium swim away from a toxin is the drive powering my psychological identity.
With exactly the same drive.
But if my physical body just wants basic survival, what does this sense of self, this mask, actually want?
It wants psychological survival.
Yep.
Through the immense power of the human mind, our basic biological desires are abstracted and sublimated.
Sublimated meaning transformed into something higher.
Yeah. The simple animal desire for a full stomach and physical warmth is sublimated into a highly complex conceptual happiness project.
A happiness project. That's a great phrase.
Right. The primal desire for physical survival is sublimated into a desperate desire to be remembered, to be considered important, to achieve high social status.
Oh, wow. So the fear of physical pain.
Is sublimated into a generalized humming anxiety about future unhappiness.
And the terrifying fear of physical death.
That's sublimated into a fear of self-negation. We become terrified of being humiliated, of being proven wrong, or of feeling utterly worthless.
So my basic animal need for a safe cave to sleep in gets transformed by my language brain into a happiness project that demands I own a beautifully decorated, perfectly spotless home.
Yes. It demands you have a thriving, respected career, incredibly well-behaved pets, and a daily life entirely free of friction.
We take a crude biological mechanism meant to keep us from being eaten by predators, and we apply it to the cleanliness of our baseboards and the tone of our emails.
That's exactly what we do. We all have a happiness project running in the background at all times. Think about your own happiness project for a second.
Okay.
You have a mental blueprint of exactly how the future needs to unfold for you to feel secure and content.
Right, like I'll finally relax when I get this promotion.
Or I'll be happy when I find the perfect partner. Or I'll be at peace when my family finally respects my efforts to keep this house clean.
Yes, the muddy floor again.
But the materials we are examining point out a massive, tragic flaw in this setup. These sources argue that our happiness projects are essentially doomed to fail.
Doomed to fail? Wow, that is a bleak perspective. I imagine anyone listening is feeling a bit of resistance to that idea right now. Why are they doomed? Why can't I just work hard enough to achieve my happiness project?
Because the world outside of our minds is inherently fundamentally uncontrollable. We are demanding absolute permanence in a universe characterized entirely by impermanence.
We want things to stay still, but they never do.
Exactly. The psychological framework outlines that human unhappiness generally stems from three unavoidable realities that we constantly try and fail to control.
What are the three?
First, the physical body. The body is impermanent. No matter what you do, it is destined to age, to get sick, and eventually pass away.
Okay, that's undeniably true. And the second?
Second, the natural world. Nature is completely indifferent to our desires. It brings massive storms, it brings decay.
And it brings mud into our houses.
Yes, the mud. And third, interpersonal relationships. We are dealing with other human beings whose own complex desires and competing happiness projects will inevitably conflict with ours.
Right, because my happiness project might directly interfere with my partner's happiness project.
Exactly. As long as you base your inner peace on controlling these three uncontrollable factors, you're setting a trap for yourself.
I want to try an analogy here to see if I'm visualizing this correctly. It sounds like the human mind is acting like this incredibly ambitious, highly skilled architect.
Okay, I like where this is going.
We spend our entire lives meticulously designing and building this towering, magnificent sandcastle. We get the turrets just right, we dig the perfect moat, we decorate it with seashells.
We invest all our energy into this creation.
Right. But the problem is, we chose to build it right at the water's edge on an active beach.
Oh, man.
And then when the tide naturally comes in, as the tide has done for billions of years, we stand there absolutely furious, face red, screaming at the ocean for being wet and ruining our perfect creation.
That is perfect. We're building our entire emotional foundation on an active fault line.
The sandcastle at the water's edge captures it perfectly. We build a fragile sense of self, a highly delicate happiness project, and then we place it in a chaotic, unpredictable, swirling world.
And we just expect the ocean to stop moving.
Right. And because we subconsciously know just how fragile this project is, the mind goes into a state of permanent overdrive to protect it. The sources use a highly descriptive term for this state, hypermentation.
Hypermentation. It sounds similar to hyperventilation, but occurring entirely within your thoughts.
That is exactly the physical sensation it produces. The human mind evolved as an incredible problem-solving instrument for species survival.
It's meant to calculate the trajectory of a spear or figure out how to build a fire.
Yes. But when it isn't disciplined, when it is left to run wild, it acts like a restless, high-frequency police scanner.
A police scanner.
It constantly sweeps our environment, our memories, and our imagined futures, actively looking for problems. It's obsessively scanning the life field for anything that might threaten the sandcastle.
Oh, like when you find yourself lying awake at 2 a.m.
Exactly. Thinking, will my boss be mad about the phrasing of that email?
Did I say the wrong thing at dinner 5 years ago?
What if the transmission in the car breaks down next month?
It's exhausting just thinking about the mechanics of it. We spend an enormous amount of our daily energy looking for trouble.
We look so hard that we effectively invent it.
Right. We suffer intensely over scenarios that exist purely in our linguistic imagination. I mean, I might spend an entire Tuesday furious at my partner for a hypothetical argument we haven't even had yet.
And notice how this flickering stream of thoughts and worries goes on entirely by itself.
What do you mean?
Well, you aren't actively sitting down and deciding to worry about the car transmission. You are just carried along by the current of thought on automatic pilot.
It just hijacks you.
Our minds are relentless problem seekers. If there is no immediate physical problem to solve, the ego will manufacture one. Its entire function, its only job, is to defend against potential threats to the self.
So, if our minds are hardwired by biology and language to look for problems, to desperately protect this fragile sense of self, What actually happens when we inevitably face a real, tangible obstacle?
You mean when the ocean actually hits the sandcastle?
Yeah, when you walk through the door and the dog has actually tracked mud onto the floor.
This brings us to the eruption of anger. This is where we see the meltdown. When the mind perceives a threat to the happiness project, even a minor one, it instantly reverts back to those primitive, animalistic survival defenses.
Oh, so because the ego feels threatened, the body responds as if physical survival is at stake.
Exactly. We experience the classic biological fight, flight, or freeze response.
Adrenaline pumps into the bloodstream, cortisol floods the system.
Blood rushes to the extremities.
The body prepares to physically battle a predator or sprint up a tree to safety.
But look closely at the nature of the problems you actually face in modern life. You are dealing with abstract, social, or incredibly complex systemic issues.
Right, like global economic pressures, nuanced family dynamics, social media comparisons.
Or simply the chaotic nature of a muddy dog. Against these abstract, conceptual human problems, our biological defense mechanisms are completely, laughably useless.
They really are. You cannot physically punch a feeling of inadequacy.
No, you can't.
You cannot literally run away from a mortgage payment or the trajectory of your own life. And freezing to just pretending the problem doesn't exist, numbing out entirely with screens or substances that eventually strips away our vitality and our humanity.
Exactly. And because these natural biological reactions fail to resolve the abstract threat, the massive amount of unspent physical energy in your body has to go somewhere.
So where does it go?
Usually it manifests as a desperate, burning need to blame the outside world. This is a crucial pivot point in understanding our psychology. We become entirely focused outward.
We start pointing fingers.
We start generating narratives. If only the traffic was lighter, I would be a calm person. If only massive corporations didn't control the economy, I would feel secure.
If only my family respected my need for a clean floor, I wouldn't be standing here yelling.
Yeah.
That is the default setting for almost everyone I know. The problem is always located out there. It's the government's fault. It's my boss's fault. It's the weather's fault. We outsource the responsibility for our inner state.
But the psychological materials point out a devastating paradox regarding this outward focus.
What's the paradox?
Fighting the external world, directing all your combative, angry energy outward toward other people or circumstances, actually feeds and expands the very problem you're trying to solve.
Wait, let's slow down here. How does fighting the problem feed it? If there is an obstacle, shouldn't I fight it to remove it?
You'd think so, but it requires an immense, continuous amount of your life energy to maintain a state of constant resistance to reality.
Okay.
The more attention and combativeness you direct outward toward things you ultimately cannot control, the more internally drained you become. You are quite literally bleeding out your psychological life force.
Because you're just spinning your wheels.
Right. When you spend your day furious at the traffic, furious at the news, furious at the mud, you become hard, suspicious, and deeply alienated.
The harder you fight against external circumstances, the darker it becomes around you.
And the more powerless you ultimately feel. You trap yourself in a self-reinforcing cycle where your resistance amplifies your suffering.
Hold on. I am struggling with this, and I know the listener is too.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's step away from the dog in the mud for a second, because mud is an accident. Let's look at a scenario with malicious intent.
Right.
Let's say someone deliberately steals my work at the office and presents it to the executives as their own. Or someone I deeply trust betrays me. In those situations, my anger feels completely justified. Didn't they objectively cause my anger?
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying I shouldn't be angry when a real, tangible injustice occurs?
It is the most natural objection to raise, and we have to dissect this carefully. We must distinguish between the external event and the internal reaction.
Okay, so split them in two.
Yes, the sources make a highly nuanced, critical distinction here. The external event, the stolen work, the betrayal of trust, the mud on the floor that absolutely happened in the real world, that is an objective reality.
Right. It's a fact.
And you may absolutely need to take firm, decisive action in the real world to address it. You may need to confront the coworker. You may need to involve human resources. You may need to end the relationship. Or you may need to grab a mop and clean the floor.
Okay, so we aren't just letting people walk all over us.
Not at all. But the anger itself, the internal psychological suffering, the volcanic heat rising in your chest, that breeds strictly and entirely within your own mind.
You're saying the external event is the provocation, But the internal emotional inferno is something my own mind is generating. I am manufacturing the heat.
Yes, the event is the provocation, but between the external provocation and your internal reaction, there is a gap.
A gap.
It might be a fraction of a millisecond, but the gap exists. And in that tiny gap lies your entire capacity for choice, which is the very essence of human freedom.
Wow.
When you say, my coworker caused my anger, you are collapsing that gap. You are acting like a biological automaton, like the paramecium.
Because I'm saying event A occurred in the world, therefore emotion B was mechanically and forcefully injected into my brain.
Right, and that denies your agency. The anger is fueled by your mind's refusal to accept that the event occurred in the first place.
So the suffering comes from a failure to accept reality as it is. I am suffering not just because the work was stolen, but because I have a secondary narrative running in my head, screaming, this shouldn't have happened. The universe should not operate this way. People should always be fair.
Exactly. The gap between how reality is actually behaving and how my rigid happiness project demands it behaves, that gap is where the anger lives.
So we suffer from a profound, deep-seated failure to accept the complexities, the unfairness, and the ambiguities of life.
Yes. We trust that our expectations will never be violated. We walk around assuming the sandcastle will stand forever, and when it is inevitably washed away, we view it as an outrageous violation of the natural order.
But disappointment, friction, and unfairness are the natural order of a complex world.
They absolutely are.
If we cannot fix the outside world to perfectly match our happiness projects, and if our natural biological reactions of fight, flight, or blame only make our suffering worse and drain our energy, what is the alternative?
We have to find a new way.
How do we actually stop being a victim of our own hyperactive minds?
The alternative requires a radical, uncomfortable shift in focus. We have to stop looking outward for the solution and turn our attention intensely inward.
Go inside.
Yes. This brings us to the central metaphor provided by the psychological materials. They describe the process of internal transformation not as a comfortable Sunday stroll down a wide, sunny, paved boulevard.
So there are no quick fixes here.
Yeah.
No easy life hacks.
Far from it. They describe the journey as a highly demanding, incredibly narrow, solitary mountain ridge.
The mountain ridge.
Picture a via ferrata, an iron path bolted onto a steep, sheer cliff face. It is a precarious balancing act that you must walk not just when the weather is beautiful and your life is going well, but when it is storming, when the wind is howling, and when the fog is so thick you cannot even see your own hand in front of your face.
That is a wildly intimidating image to present to someone who is already stressed out. Why is the path to inner peace described as such a terrifying, solitary mountain climb?
Because the goal of this path is what the text referred to as inner alchemy. Let's look closely at that term. In historical physical alchemy, the legendary quest was to find the philosopher's stone to turn base, worthless metals like lead into pure gold.
Right, the classic magic trick.
But in spiritual or psychological alchemy, the literal transformation of metals is understood as just a metaphor. The real work is internal.
So what are we transforming?
It is the psychological quest to transform the bitter, acidic vinegar of our anger, our aggression, and our daily suffering into the sweet honey of equanimity, mental clarity, and joy.
Transforming vinegar into honey. That implies something crucial, actually. It means you don't throw the vinegar away. You have to use the raw, acidic material of your negative emotions to create the positive state.
That is the foundational, non-negotiable rule of this inner alchemy, and it borrows directly from the laws of physics. Energy cannot be destroyed.
It can only be transformed or redirected.
Exactly. You cannot simply press a delete button on your anger.
Yeah.
You cannot erase your childhood conditioning. You cannot magically forget your traumas or your resentments.
They don't just vanish.
The texts explicitly state that your cells and your nervous system remember everything. It compares human cellular memory to the internet. What is once put out there exists forever in the cache.
Wow.
The physical and emotional information does not get lost. What has happened cannot be unmade.
So the common self-help advice of just think positive thoughts and banish the negativity is fundamentally flawed according to this framework. We can't just pretend the vinegar doesn't exist or try to paint over it with affirmations.
It is not only flawed, it's a dangerous form of psychological suppression that eventually leads to much greater, more destructive explosions of anger later on.
So what does the alchemical process demand?
It demands that we work directly, hands-on, with the raw, uncomfortable, burning energy of the anger itself. It requires total, unflinching honesty and a willingness to look at the darkest, most reactive, most petty parts of our own minds.
The sources have this incredibly vivid, almost bizarre image to illustrate the level of commitment this inner work takes.
Oh, the engraving.
Yeah, it describes an old philosophical engraving showing a person on their hands and knees, physically pushing their head through a tight, illusory bubble.
It's a powerful visual.
The bubble represents their everyday, conditioned reality, the safe, predictable world of their fragile happiness project. And they are straining, pushing their head through this tough membrane to look at the cosmic laws, the universal truths of how reality actually functions.
It says this requires 100% engagement to pierce the veil.
Right. It's a striking visual metaphor. Pushing through that bubble requires us to recognize how deeply and for how long we have been deceiving ourselves.
We have to see how we have artificially inflated our egos, how we have put on these heavy, clanking suits of armor to protect ourselves from the inherent pain of being alive.
Why is pushing through that bubble so terrifying for us? I mean, if the bubble is making us miserable and angry, why do we resist this inner work so fiercely? Why do we fight to stay inside the illusion?
We resist it because we actually use our anger, our closed-off nature, and our rigid expectations as a shield. We are fundamentally terrified of our own vulnerability.
We're terrified of humiliation and emotional exposure.
Exactly. Think about it. If I stay angry at my coworker, I feel powerful. The anger gives me a surge of adrenaline that mimics strength.
Right, you feel righteous.
And if I am constantly blaming the outside world, I never have to look at my own flaws or my own contributions to the conflict. Stepping onto this narrow mountain path, pushing through the bubble, means dropping the shield. It means facing our ultimate hidden fear.
Which is what? What is the ultimate fear hiding behind the anger?
The fear that we are actually immensely powerful creators of our own experience and that we have voluntarily handed all of our power over to external forces.
Wow.
We are terrified to realize that our suffering is largely self-generated by our own minds.
Yeah.
Because if we accept that reality, we can no longer play the comfortable role of the victim.
Right, because if I'm not the victim, then I'm responsible.
We have to take absolute unyielding responsibility for our inner state, regardless of what the external world is doing.
And we would rather feel miserable and righteously indignant than feel peaceful and entirely responsible. That is a tough mirror to look into.
It really is.
But let's bring this down from the philosophical mountain ridge and put it back in the house. Recognizing this philosophical reality is one thing. If I am standing in my kitchen, staring at the muddy floor, my heart is pounding, my jaw is tight, I can't just conceptualize an engraving of a man in a bubble.
No, you need something practical.
Exactly. How do we practically, functionally begin this alchemical transformation in our daily high-stress lives? What is the first actual, tangible step?
The very first actionable step, and it is a strict prerequisite for everything else, is cultivating a state of pure, non-judgmental awareness.
Pure awareness.
Notice carefully what the texts do not say. They do not recommend suppressing the heat of the anger. They do not say you should instantly force yourself to feel calm or take deep breaths to make the feeling go away.
Oh, that's interesting. Usually people say take a deep breath to calm down.
Right, but instead they instruct us to become intimately, directly familiar with the anger itself. We must turn our attention entirely inward and map the textures, the physical contours, the rising sea swells of the emotion in our bodies.
So cultivating quiet awareness of the anger while you are in the middle of being angry. That sounds like trying to calmly study the wind patterns of a tornado while standing inside the funnel cloud.
It is incredibly difficult, which is why it requires deliberate practice. Think about how you would handle a wild, profoundly frightened horse.
Okay, a wild horse. If you have a wild horse panicking in a small pen, kicking up dust, throwing its head, you don't run into the pen screaming at it to calm down.
No, that would be disastrous.
You don't throw rocks at it to make it behave. That just makes the panic worse. And you don't run away and pretend the horse is okay, leaving it to exhaust itself.
So what do?
You have to walk into the pen, sit down quietly in the dirt, and just watch it. You observe its movements. You learn its chaotic rhythms. You sit with the terrifying, unpredictable energy of the animal until, very gradually, the horse realizes you are not a threat, and it begins to settle its own nervous system.
That is exactly the posture we must take with our own untamed, hyperactive minds. We must observe the highly charged impulses.
Watch the horse run.
Right. We must watch the rushes of fear, the physical tension in the shoulders, the visceral, urgent press to act or yell. We observe all of this without actually acting on the impulses, and crucially, without judging ourselves for having them.
So we do not say, I am a bad person for being this angry.
No, we just watch the horse run.
Okay, let's say we do that. The initial blinding heat subsides a bit. The horse stops kicking the fence. We have established a little bit of space in the pen. How do we start to understand what actually spooked the horse? The texts provide a specific thought experiment for this, don't they?
Yes, they offer a highly practical, surgical tool for investigating the hidden mechanics of our anger. It asks the listener to sit down in the comfort of their home, somewhere safe and relaxed, and vividly recall a recent moment of intense anger.
Okay, so go back into the memory.
Feel your way back into the situation. Feel the physical sensation returning, the tightening jaw, the heat in the chest, and that instead of blaming the external trigger, instead of recounting what the other person did wrong, ask yourself 3 critical questions.
What are the 3 questions?
Question 1, what did I want that I didn't get? Question 2, what was I getting that I didn't want? And question 3, the most important one, how did I feel myself, my ego, my identity mask was being negated?
Oh, that's powerful. Let's apply this directly to the muddy floor scenario to see how it works.
All right, let's do it.
I walk in, I see the mud, I feel the explosion of rage. Later, the heat subsides, I sit down and I run the experiment. Question 1. What did I want that I didn't get? Well, that is the physical desire. I wanted a clean house. I wanted the floor to remain in the pristine state I left it in this morning.
Correct. The physical desires are usually quite obvious and surface level. Question 2, what was I getting that I didn't want?
Also obvious, I was getting a mess. I was getting extra physical labor at the end of an exhausting day. I was getting unexpected friction.
Very straightforward. But it is the 3rd question where the true psychological alchemy begins. Question 3, how did I feel myself was being negated? What is the hidden ego desire?
This is where it gets deeply uncomfortable because it requires that unflinching honesty.
Yes.
If I look past the literal dirt, the anger isn't actually about the mud. The mud is just a symbol. The silent narrative running beneath the anger, powering the heat, is something like, I am the only one who cares about this house. I work all day, I clean, and my effort is completely invisible to my family.
Yeah.
I feel unloved. I feel fundamentally unappreciated. I feel like a servant. And because I feel too vulnerable or perhaps too scared to actually sit down and communicate those deep feelings of existential inadequacy to my partner or my kids, I will sublimate all that dread.
I will convert it.
Right. I will convert it into a localized, volcanic rage directed right at the dog on the floor.
Notice how clearly that illustrates the hidden mechanics of human suffering. The explosive anger is a displacement mechanism.
It's a distraction.
It is a defense strategy designed by your ego to keep you from having to feel the raw, terrifying vulnerability of looking at your family and saying, I feel unappreciated and I need emotional support.
Oh, man. That is so much harder to say than just yelling about mud.
Because your ego protects you from that terrifying vulnerability by converting the quiet pain into loud, aggressive, righteous anger, you become the angry, commanding victim, which feels much safer and more powerful than being the vulnerable, pleading partner.
It's incredible. The moment you shine the light of awareness on that hidden mechanism, the anger actually starts to lose its grip. It's like pulling the curtain back on The Wizard of Oz. You see the machinery pulling the levers.
Exactly.
But seeing the machinery without judging yourself is a heavy lift.
Oh, yeah.
What happens next? Once we can actually observe these hidden desires and fears, we still have all this pent-up physical pressure in the body. How do we physically and mentally release it?
This brings us to the active practice of letting go, which is perhaps the most heavily misunderstood concept in this entire psychological framework.
Why misunderstood?
Because to understand letting go, we first have to understand the true nature of desire. The texts make a brilliant observation here. Desiring something, clinging tightly to an expectation, actually requires constant active effort.
Like flexing a muscle.
Yes, it is an energetic clenching of the mind and the body. Therefore, relaxation, true letting go, is not a new action you take. It is a simple, direct cessation of effort.
Letting go is the cessation of effort. It sounds a bit abstract. How do we ground this physically so the listener can actually feel what you mean?
The sources provide a wonderful physical visualization to bridge the gap between the mental state and the physical body. I want you, the listener, to imagine you are holding a very heavy weight in your hands with your arms extended straight out in front of you.
Okay, holding a heavy weight.
Holding that weight requires immense, continuous muscular tension. Your arms are shaking, your shoulders are burning, your jaw is tight. Now imagine putting the weight down.
Oh.
You don't have to perform a complex new action to put it down. You simply have to stop the effort of holding it. You stop flexing the muscle.
You just stop gripping.
Exactly. The texts guide us to practice this physical reality as a pathway to mental release. You sit quietly and become intensely aware of the muscular tension in your body. This tension is the literal physical manifestation of your psychological gripping.
It is your mind demanding control reflected in your muscles.
Right. You start at the bottoms of your feet, and you consciously visualize letting go of effort. You move progressively upward. You let go of the effort in your calves, your thighs, your abdomen, your chest.
You release the tight grip in your arms, your hands, and finally, you release the subtle, chronic tightness in your jaw and your brow.
The sources describe it as allowing a tightly stretched rubber band to finally, gracefully snap back to its natural resting state. You aren't forcing the rubber band to relax, you are just stopping pulling.
This progressive physical relaxation is directly connected to a profound energetic shift within the body, isn't it? The documents draw upon ancient metaphors to explain this specifically, the concept of ascending energy centers, often described in yogic traditions.
Yes, and we don't have to view this as literal anatomical biology, but rather as a highly accurate psychological map of how human consciousness ascends.
Moving the energy up the mountain path. How does that map actually work when I'm standing in the kitchen?
When we are trapped in the blinding heat of anger and the desperate need to control the muddy floor, our life energy is trapped in the lowest energy centers of the body.
The survival centers.
Exactly. These centers govern our base, animal functions, physical survival, raw fear, and the desire for power and control over our environment. We are operating entirely from a space of biological threat.
But as we practice this profound physical and mental letting go, as we progressively release the muscular tension and the psychological demand that reality bend to our will, that trapped, dense energy naturally begins to ascend.
It moves upward through the body as the tension releases.
Yes, it moves up from the root of survival, through the center of creative power in the abdomen, and eventually it reaches the chest, it reaches the heart.
And the heart is described in these texts as the ultimate threshold. It is the bridge between our material, animal existence, and our higher, fully realized human dimensions.
I have to pause you here because I can hear the skeptic in the audience right now. I feel the skepticism myself.
Oh, definitely. It's a common reaction.
A lot of people might hear, let go of your desires, stop fighting reality, relax your grip, and they think that sounds exactly like giving up. It sounds like a recipe for becoming a passive doormat.
It really does sound like that at first.
We live in a tough, highly competitive world. If someone disrespects you at work, if the world pushes you, isn't softness a weakness? If I just relax my jaw and let go, won't people just walk all over me?
It is the single most common resistance to this entire philosophy, and the texts address this exact paradox directly. Our modern culture has deeply conditioned us to perceive a closed-hearted, rigid, combative posture as the ultimate definition of strength.
Right. We look at the man with the clenched jaw, the raised fist, the unyielding demands, and we say, that is a strong person.
But psychological alchemy reveals that this rigidity is actually a state of extreme, fragile vulnerability.
I need you to unpack that. How is being rigid and combative vulnerable?
Think of a dry, rigid, dead tree branch in a severe storm. It is hard. It cannot bend. And because it cannot bend, it snaps under the pressure of the wind.
Oh, that makes sense.
When you are psychologically rigid, when your heart is closed and you demand the world operate exactly according to your specific happiness project, every single broken promise, every delayed train, every unfulfilled expectation has the power to completely shatter your peace.
Because your inner peace requires the outside world to behave perfectly, which it never, ever will.
Precisely. You are entirely helplessly at the mercy of external events. You are a puppet, and the world is pulling your strings.
So true letting go is not about avoiding life, and it's certainly not about being a victim or a doormat. It is about loosening your desperate, exhausting grip on demanding that life go exactly your way.
Exactly. It is realizing that you can absolutely desire a clean floor. You can calmly and firmly ask your family to help you clean, but you do not attach your core existential inner peace to the outcome of whether they do it or not.
Letting go is actually a massive reclamation of personal power. You are deciding once and for all that no external event, no rude coworker, and no amount of mud has the authority to dictate your internal weather.
That is a profound paradigm shift. Softness isn't weakness. Softness is flexibility. It is resilience. It is true autonomy.
Which brings us to the ultimate destination of this entire challenging journey. What actually happens when we do this work?
When we observe the hyperactive mind, when we sit in the pen and tame the wild horse, when we physically let go of the rigid grip and allow the energy to ascend to the heart, what does it practically mean to drop the armor?
The final phase of the journey, the summit of this via ferrata, is what the texts call opening the heart. And it requires a very careful, integral balance. The sources note a beautiful piece of wisdom. A heart without a head is blind, but a head without a heart is lame.
Meaning we need both the clear intellectual understanding of our psychological machinery and the emotional courage to stay open to the world.
Exactly. To truly understand the power of the open heart, it helps to paint a vivid picture of its opposite, the closed heart. Imagine a person sitting inside a locked, heavily fortified private room.
Okay, locked room.
They spend their entire life trying to hoard everything they want inside this room. Pleasure, physical security, total control over their environment. And they build massive, thick, impenetrable defensive walls to keep everything they don't want strictly outside pain, disappointment, betrayal, mud.
It sounds like the ultimate successful execution of the happiness project. Complete, absolute control.
But it is a tragic, suffocating illusion. Because eventually, inevitably, the things they want so desperately to keep secure begin to slip out through the cracks in the floorboards.
Right, because everything is impermanent.
And the unwanted realities of life sickness, aging, sudden change, the conflicting desires of other people slip in under the door. And the person sitting in that fortified room suddenly realizes they haven't built a sanctuary at all. They have merely built their own prison.
Wow. The deeper their isolation, the higher the walls they build, the greater their paranoia, their anxiety, and ultimately, their boiling anger becomes.
Yes, they are suffocating in their own heavy armor. They are protected from the pain, but they are also completely isolated from the joy of living. The closed heart is a state of strong, desperate attachment and profound, hidden fear.
So opening the heart is the direct alchemical antidote to this violence and anger.
Yes. By committing to this path, by intentionally sitting with the burning discomfort of our anger, by asking the hard, surgical questions about our negated egos, and by physically practicing the cessation of muscular effort, we experience a gradual, profound softening of the ego.
Let the walls of the room crack open and crumble.
We do. We consciously open ourselves to the distinct possibility of not getting what we want. We open ourselves to the pain, the helplessness, and the sheer raw vulnerability of being a conscious human being in a wildly unpredictable universe.
And here's the greatest, most beautiful paradox of all. By fully accepting that pain and vulnerability, by actively inviting it in rather than fighting it at the gates, we become far less frightened of it.
Because we realize it won't actually destroy us. We realize that we can feel the sharp sting of disappointment, or the heavy frustration of a messy house, or the sting of a coworker's betrayal without it threatening our fundamental existence.
The sandcastle washes away, but the beach remains.
That is brilliant. Yes, we realize we possess a deep, untouchable inner serenity that is not dependent on external circumstances aligning perfectly.
It reminds me of the ultimate transformation of the traveler described in these texts. We stop being the desperate, anxious beggar, constantly trying to force the external world to drop little coins of happiness into our cup.
And instead,
we return to our own lives as a sovereign, a king or a queen of our own inner realm. We realize we are entirely capable of navigating whatever happens, whether the sea is perfectly calm or a massive hurricane is blowing.
that is the essence of transforming the vinegar into honey. It is discovering the inner gold.
Let's take a deep breath and warmly reflect on the journey we have been on today, because we have covered incredible, transformative ground in this analysis. We started with a simple, highly relatable muddy floor, a clenched jaw, and a racing heartbeat. We realized we were trapped in the architecture of a failing happiness project, a primitive biological imperative twisted by our language and our fragile egos into an impossible demand for perfect control.
We learn to view our own minds not as absolute truth tellers, but as hyperactive police scanners, constantly seeking out problems and generating immense suffering over things that haven't even happened.
We discover the immense alchemical power of sitting quietly in the pen with the wild horse of our anger. We learn to ask the hard surgical questions: what did I want? What was I getting? How was my hidden ego negated?
And we explored the physical and mental mechanics of letting go not as an act of weakness or submission, but as the ultimate reclamation of our own energy, allowing us to drop the heavy armor and step out of the suffocating prison of the closed heart.
As we close this exploration, there is one final striking image from the text that I want to leave you, the listener, to mull over. It perfectly encapsulates this entire shift in perspective.
I'm ready. Set the scene for us.
Imagine a person walking down a highly chaotic, intensely busy city street. There are massive crowds everywhere, loud music is blaring from open storefronts, street merchants are yelling, and cars are endlessly honking their horns in gridlock traffic.
That sounds overwhelming.
At first, the person is absolutely miserable. Their shoulders are up to their ears, their jaw is clenched tight. They're thinking, I cannot stand this noise, it is ruining my peace. This city is unbearable.
Right, fighting reality.
But then, they stop walking. They stand still on the sidewalk, they take a deep breath, and they realize something profound about their own mind. They ask themselves, wait a minute, is the noise actually bothering me, or am I actively bothering the noise?
Am I actively bothering the noise? Wow. It completely flips the script. The noise is just reality happening. It is just sound waves in the air. The suffering, the exhaustion, is my active, continuous resistance to it.
Exactly. It is the sudden realization that there is absolutely no point in fighting, resisting, or rejecting that which we cannot change. By letting go of our active muscular resistance to the noise, we instantly regain our internal power.
I love that.
I want you to take that thought, that exact question, into your day. The next time you feel that sudden volcanic heat rising in your chest, the next time your jaw clenches and your breathing gets shallow, whether it is from a massive traffic jam on your commute, a shockingly harsh email from a colleague, or, yes, walking through your front door to find a chaotic trail of earthy, wet paw prints across your perfectly clean floor paws.
I must observe it.
Do not act. Feel the energy in your body and ask yourself, are you going to actively bother the noise? Are you going to let this minor friction pull you back into the heavy, isolated prison of the closed heart? Or are you going to use this exact friction, this exact uncomfortable energy as the fuel you need to step onto the mountain path, let go of the rigid grip, and unlock your ultimate human potential?